Would you consider yourself a good driver? I'm willing to bet most of you said yes, but we all have that friend that's a hazard on the road, a danger to the community, and we all wonder how they even got a license in the first place. And if you don't know someone like this, chances might be because it's you. I guess this is the part where I should mention that just because you have a license doesn't make you a good driver. Because driving tests, they're not all created equal, and depending on where you live can really influence how difficult of an experience you're going to have. Like, just look at Mexico, where they don't even have a test. Yeah, that's right, there is no test, there's no practical, no theory, they just hand you a license and best of luck. Now you compare this to somewhere like Finland, which is known for having one of the most challenging tests in the entire world, with Dark Souls level of difficulty that feeds off of destroying the hopes and dreams of those that attempt it. But these are the outliers, the extremes. So where does the US and the UK fall on this scale of driving tests, and just how different are they? And by the end of the video, let me know in the comments down below whether you think you'd pass one or both of these tests. Firstly, it's important to remember that with the US, each state kind of likes to do its own thing, especially when it comes to local and state laws, so they might do the tests a little differently. So make sure you study for the state you're going to be living in. Right, let's jump on into it. The first thing you're going to have to do on your journey to getting your license, whether it's in the UK or US, is take a theory test. In the UK, this is actually split into two separate tests. The first one being like any other test you've taken throughout your life and is based on the rules of the road and road signs. The second test is actually a hazard perception test, and this is where things get a little interesting. You'll be shown a series of videos that all contain a random driving hazard, like a kid chasing his ball into the road or someone randomly pulling out on you, and as soon as you identify the hazard, you have to click the button. Click too early, you lose points. Click too late, you lose points. And if you click too much, yeah, you guessed it, you lose points. Luckily, there is an app you can buy to help you practice for this, as it can be a little unusual if you've never done it before. Either way, you need to score 43 out of 50 on the written test and 44 out of 75 on the hazard perception test to receive a pass on both. And that pass lasts for 2 years. Comparatively, the US theory test is a lot simpler. It consists of 20 questions based on the laws of the road and road signs, and you need to get at least 15 out of those 20 correct to receive a pass. Now, a big difference here is in the UK, unlike the US, you cannot schedule your theory and your road test for the same day. Next, to get your license in the US, you're going to have to take an eye test. This is done by a special machine that uses science and stuff to make sure you can actually see. Now, I've never actually heard of anyone failing this. In the UK, the eye test is kind of an afterthought. It's done right before your road test, and they just walk you out to the parking lot and ask you to read a number plate of another car that's about 10 meters away.
First part of the test is a doddle. All you've got to do is sing out the registration plate of that blue car.
Now, before you can do your road test, you're going to need an appointment. And in the UK, that can be a months-long ordeal of waiting and anticipation. In the US, obviously it can vary, but for the most part, it's usually a couple of weeks. Having successfully passed all these other trials, you're on to the final boss, the road test. Now, if you're in the UK, you've probably been preparing for months for this moment, like some sort of Rocky fight training montage. And most people will have hired private driving instructors to specifically practice for the test. If you ever visit the UK, you'll be able to spot these people a mile off, as all the vehicles have to display a red L plate on the car itself or on a top box. Everyone generally has a bit more patience with these drivers, as they're some of the most nervous people on the roads, but whatever you do not want to get stuck behind one. I think this helps illustrate some of the expectations around the different tests. As in the UK, the expectation is that you'll fail the first time, and you have to practice even harder in order to pass. And this is completely different to the US, where almost everyone believes they're going to pass the first time. It's not hyped up in the same way into this really big thing, and as a result, everyone's way more positive and confident. Maybe this plays into the psychology of believing in yourself and having a bit more confidence, but who knows. All I know is that I certainly thought I was going to pass my first time, so much so that I organised picking all my friends up to take them to the Friday night football game. As it turns out, this confidence would come to bite me in the arse, because of course I didn't pass, and then I had to go around to all my friends and tell them that I wouldn't be able to come pick them up. Oh, how hard my life was as a teenager. Also, if you find you're enjoying these videos, help me keep my confidence up by hitting that subscribe button. Right, onto the test itself. No matter where you are, you're going to have to show all your documentation proving who you are, that you have an appointment, and that your vehicle's legal to be on the road. Also, if you're in the UK, you'll need at least 2 of those sexy looking L plates for your car. And if you're taking the test in the US, while it may vary a little bit from state to state as I mentioned, apart from that it's pretty much standardised, so at least you know what you're getting. Compared to the UK, which is essentially a lucky dip of routes, questions and manoeuvres to really help maintain that level of anxiety. In the US, you'll start in a car park, where you'll have to drive around a little course and then do some basic things like reversing backwards, perform an emergency stop, and then parallel park. Although I will say that you could parallel park an aircraft carrier in the spot they give you, to the point where I didn't actually learn to parallel park until I was on the test. I kind of just thought about it and then ended up in the spot. Now, while this all does count for points, it's really only there to make sure you're safe enough in the car so that they can take you out on the actual road. And after all this build up, the road part's kind of a letdown. So you drive along the road, never building up any meaningful speed, before finding yourself in a neighbourhood where you just have to make sure you don't do any rolling stops or break any other rules of the road, before you kind of just make a rough box shape and end up right back at the test centre about 15 minutes later. So how does this compare to the UK test? Well, first, let's wind it back a second, because you have a choice to make. Do you want to take the test in a manual, also called a stick shift if you're an American, or an automatic? That's because unlike the US, where a license is a license, in the UK, if you only pass your test in a certain type of vehicle, you can only drive that kind of vehicle. So if you pass an automatic, you're not allowed to drive stick shift or manual cars. However, if you pass in a manual, you can drive whatever you want. You'll then do your previously mentioned eyesight check, and then you immediately embark on your 40-minute randomly selected route following the directions of your instructor. I had an absolute nightmare with this, as my instructor's directions were, let's call them, not the most informative, and more than once I found myself doing entire circles of a roundabout after missing my turn. Now, luckily for me, that's not grounds for failing the test, but it certainly didn't do me any favours keeping me calm and relaxed. While driving along, they'll ask you to pull over to the side of the road 3 times. Now, of course you have to do this in a very precise, test-like manner, making sure you're being very safe.
Safety first, then teamwork.
And obeying all the rules. And once you pull over to the side, they'll just say, continue on. And then you'll have to join back into the traffic once again in a very safe and precise manner and just continue driving down the road. This is where your random potluck experience continues, as they'll take you to an adequate location and then randomly select a parking maneuver for you to complete, whether it's pulling forward into a spot, reversing into a spot, or parallel parking. After this, while they got you stopped there, they'll usually take the opportunity to ask you a couple of questions, and this could be anything from showing them how to defrost the windows to actually asking you to pop the hood of the vehicle and show them where the engine oil goes. After this, they'll usually have you start driving again and you're almost home free. They'll usually give you one additional task, like doing an emergency stop, before having you just start driving back to the test centre. Once you're back, they'll have you turn off the engine and they'll tell you right then and there whether you passed or failed. And that's it, your driving test is complete. If you haven't posted a comment down below, don't worry, here's your chance. Do you think you would pass both these tests? Or is there something you might struggle with? Also, if you want more random interesting facts about the US, make sure you check out my other video here. And as always everyone, I'm Jack, this is Explore from Indoors. Everyone stay safe and I'll catch you in the next video.